All right, everybody. All right, everybody. Oh my God, I got a lady on the channel. She good looking. She smart. She look like she's smart. She got books behind her. She probably read all of them in the night and all that kind of stuff. You know how them smart people do. And she gonna come on the channel. I'm so excited. And I'm gonna tell in front of you, my viewers, I apologize. I think I spelled her name wrong. She said, that's not the way you spell it. I'm sorry, so she gonna have to even say her name. I know my name. I'm Anthony Brogdon. I know you had strong inspirations. I know you like what I'm doing because I'm doing it good. And I know you know that this is some good stuff. So I know you know that it's time to subscribe to the channel. It's free. Just hit the button. Hit like this video. Come on now, and hit the notifications bell. That's nothing. It just I put 4 or 5 videos up a week, and to give you a little way to be notified that there's a new video. And then do this. Tell somebody about strong inspirations. Don't keep it to yourself, trying to act like you know everything and don't want people to know where you learned it. Because it's here on the channel. It's interesting stuff, and I guess it's going to give you some interesting information. You watch. And come on, watch my movie. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. How slaves went to college and black millionaires in the 1800s. I list about 150 businesses, not in the movie, hold on, I'm doing it wrong, in my book. There's about 150 businesses in the book. In the movie, it's not as much because I got interviews with people whose family owned the business in the early 1900s. All right, 75 minutes of powerful, powerful information. It's on Amazon. It's called Business in the Black. And then, as I just told you, I got the book out too. It's titled Black Business Book, which now this got over 150 businesses listed, starting with businesses owned by slaves. Now, I didn't know that. You know, they ain't teach that in school. That'd have made me feel real good to hear that story. And so the book is very, very powerful. They're both available on Amazon. But if you like I say, you want to cut the big Amazon, man, I'll just go to my website, businessintheblack.net. All right, come on and do it today. We need you to do it. And if you get the book, I'll autograph it. Which, like I say, that might be worth something one day because I'm jamming on this strong inspirations. And I got a lady there, she smiling, she say, man, quit talking so much, man. Let me get it on. Let me tell it like I got to tell her. I got the story to tell you. So, okay, sister, I'm sorry for holding you up. Please tell us your name and what you do and get the story going. I'm ready.
Okay, my name's Cynthia Atchico, and I'm a genealogist and a researcher, and I'm a descendant of the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts of the Frausto. Victoriano Frausto was my 3rd great-grandfather.
Let me stop you there. It's funny, you know, if we see an African-American sister, she got long hair, she say, I got Indian in my family. You know, that's always something they say. I think my mom had Indian because her hair was kind of long and it was hers, you know. That's a little known fact. We don't really know much about that. There were African-American Indians. Go in and tell your story and how this all happened.
Well, let's talk about like how you say that there's like Black Indians.
Right.
So like in the East Coast on the colonies for 200 years while they were forming America, the people that lived there, the colonists and the government, did not like Native Americans and they did not like Africans. So they let them stay together. They wanted to make them both indentured servants, except for Native Americans were not willing to be a slave because this was their land. So they said, hey, we don't have to listen to you. We're at home. We can leave and go someplace else. So they weren't very good slaves. Now, Africans knew that they came from a faraway place and they crossed the water and all these things. And they knew that they couldn't go home easily. So they were more easily susceptible to be made into a slave.
Now, let me ask you this. When the Indians said that did they ever try it for a little bit of period of time, and then there was a lot of revolts? How long did they try to enslave the native people here? Did that how well did
I
that
would
go
say
anywhere?
at least for 50 to 75 years, you know, and they probably did enslave some of them, you know. Really don't know. That's not my specialty. You'd
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
find somebody that's their specialty. But during that time when they didn't care for those two people, they did breed together. I mean, they lived together, they bred together. So when you find somebody, especially of the five civilized tribes, which is where my research is in Seminoles, because I'm a Black Seminole descendant, there are Black Indians. So when you hear of the five civilized tribes fighting for their rights to be recognized as Black Indians, it's true. They probably are a Black Indian if they say that they are.
Okay,
Like
now let me
I'm,
ask you this.
I'm a Black descendant and I don't look Black. So,
Yeah,
you
right.
know, I mean,
Yeah. Now, when you say that they live together, what does that mean? They lived on the plantation together, or what do you mean live together?
they lived like if they were in a plantation, they lived there. If they weren't, they were just like, you know, walking around, living here and there. Like I said, that's not my
Yeah,
specialty.
I got you. I got you.
But while they were there together on the East Coast is when they mixed.
Okay. So
Now, not everybody did, but the ones that say that they did, they probably did. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
you
So now
shouldn't
let
discredit
me ask you
somebody.
here.
The Seminoles are the first created integrated race of America. They are not an Aboriginal race. They are a created race. So they're like the very first Americans, because the people that did not want to deal with the colonies, they went to Spain. And when they went to Spain, Spain was not just Florida. Spain expanded all the way to the edges of Louisiana.
Okay.
So when they say Florida, you know, when you think about now the Seminoles were in Florida, it's not just the Florida that's now, it's like the bottom half of Louisiana all the way down to Florida. Even parts of Georgia were
Okay.
part of Spain. And
Okay.
so those people that didn't want to deal with America, they were the Spanish, some of the Spanish that were there. They could have been some white people, you
Okay.
know, Black people, the people that were left of the Native American tribes, because, you know, those people had been hit with smallpox and all these other diseases that the conquistadors had brought. So
Okay.
those populations were depleted. So
Now,
when those people were depleted, they need to, you know, you need to grow. So you need to have somebody to have a child with who's going to help you work the land, all the different things you need to have a culture. So when people came in there and they decided, all right, I'm going to be with you, I'm going to stay with you. Like the Africans and the Native Americans, they had similarities in skin tone. They were both earth-based. You know, they like to grow certain things. You know, they believed in family and tradition. You know, they were being abused by the United States government. And so everybody that didn't want to deal with them went to Spain. Now,
when you say what? Okay. Now the Seminoles were in the East Coast area.
the Seminoles are not an Aboriginal race, which means they're created this race in the early 1800s. Before that, there was no such thing as Seminole. Okay.
Okay.
So when those people all came there, they had been breeding with the people that were left there, you know, some of the Yamasee, some of the Hitchiti, some of the other tribes that, you know, we may not even know the names of them anymore. Those people, all these people came in and started breeding with them and living with them. So when they started living there, just like in America, right? You have my example that I use is like Wewokian. Okay. So like if we started in Wewoka, which is here in Seminole County. All right. So if you came here today and they said, all right, everybody that's here today, you're going to be a Wewokian. All right. It could be somebody just coming through to visit somebody. It could be someone who just moved here. It could be someone that's been here for 100 years, 200 years. It could be anybody.
Okay.
But in 200 years from now, they're going to say all those people created that race 200 years ago were Wewokians. All right. So all those people that were here on that day that they created that and that lived here for no matter how amount of time or the DNA or whatever, they're Wewokians. And that's why
Okay.
when the Seminole Nation wanted to do this stuff about DNA, they weren't able to do it because how can you prove somebody's DNA when it's not an Aboriginal race?
Okay. Who came up with the name Seminole then? How does that, yeah.
Well, because they were living on the, I think it was the Hitchiti language and the Muskogee language was the language that was most commonly used. So they use that. So they're called Cimarrons, runaways, and it means the runaways. So it means not necessarily the ones who ran away from slavery. It's the people who ran away from the government. I mean, it's all kinds. It's the people that ran away and they formed their own race. So that's the misconception in the Seminole history is they say that the Seminoles came from Creeks. That's not true. Long before they even had the Seminole Nation, African Americans were living in Spain. They're in Florida. They had their own government. They had their own land. They had their own language. They lived in their own villages. Now, when they started forming the Seminole Nation in the early 1800s, that's when all these people came together.
So now
And so
these Seminole Native people are intermingling with African Americans.
Mhm. Some of them now, just like everybody else, right? Some people don't breed outside their race. So some of them did not breed outside their race, and they're still like, you know, I don't believe there's a pure anything, but if they say that they're pure like Hitchiti or Yamasee or whatever they claim that they are, you know, you cannot deny them that, just like you can't deny somebody something that they're saying that they're Seminole or Black Seminole or Black Cherokee, you know, all the different things that there are. You can't say that they're not.
Yes, I got
because
you.
until you actually do the research and know what they are. Because sometimes they're wrong.
How far back do you go in your research to your family?
My family, well, on my white side, because I'm also John Lapham Bullis's great granddaughter, and he is the white guy that was in charge, the lieutenant who was in charge of the scouts. So for him, we go all the way back accordingly through the Latter-day Saints, to Adam and Eve on that side. And so then on the Black side, the Fraustos, we go back to Africa, to Kenya, and then from there, they were conquistadors. So they went to Spain, and so one of them married one of Isabella and Ferdinand's daughters, and he came, yeah, and so he came as a conquistador. So there was Black conquistadors back then. And so they came up to Mexico. And so then from Mexico, we bred in and out Black, not Black, Black, not Black, for 100 and something years. And then that's when we became Seminole Indian Scouts. So one of those Fraustos married one of the Seminoles that had come from Florida up to Oklahoma, from Oklahoma to Mexico. And so then that's where, you know, my current, that part of me comes from.
Now, go back a second. You said that on the man's side, he was he an Indian? Was he
which one? The white guy or the Black guy?
The white guy.
The white guy. No, he was, okay, so his family, his name is John Lapham Bullis, and so his family were Quakers. So he's from New York.
So he hooked up with a Seminole woman.
Yes, he did, because he wasn't racist.
I got it.
He wasn't racist, but they couldn't marry or anything because, first of all, he was already married, and Seminoles were polygamists. So in the Seminole, in our people, you could have more than one wife as long as the community did not object. So he's very famous in Texas history. And when he was in charge of the Seminoles, he went with them when they fought. He became part of the family. He wasn't just
he left his wife.
Huh?
He left his wife.
Well, yeah, they weren't really together because she was like fragile. I really hate to say anything about her because
Yeah,
it's not my family,
I got
but
you.
they didn't live together. He lived there at the camp. She lived in San Antonio, which is like 3 hours away now. So it was probably at least a day,
Okay, I got you.
back then.
I
And
got you.
so she didn't live there. He lived there. And when he lived there, he lived in the camp with us in the back. And he used to get ridiculed for that, for living with them, like living with us. And, he had a child with her, and at that point, when we were Seminole Scouts, we were mixed. So some of our family was darker, some of us were lighter. And, she was light, she looked more Mexican. And I heard she was really beautiful. So, she was younger than him. So he had a child with her. And then after the Indian Wars in the 1880s, they shipped him off because, he was a lifetime military person. But he left his son lots of land. He left her some land and
Where?
stuff like that. And so he went on and married somebody else, and he retired a brigadier general.
Okay, so now he left her some land where?
He left her land in Del Rio, Texas, and he left his
Okay.
son a couple thousand acres.
Oh, really? So he's a big guy.
Oh yeah, he's big.
Yeah, he sounds like he's a big guy. And
Yeah.
so, is there any in your family? Is there anybody who was enslaved?
From my recollection, direct recollection, no, but I'm sure the one that was in Florida, I'm not sure the history, but we had some trauma. But see, the thing with our people, the Seminoles, is we're not emancipated. So like when we left Florida, we went to Oklahoma in the 1840s. And then in 1850, we were in Mexico fighting. So we were still fighting. Ever since we left Florida, we fought. So when they were, people were dealing with slavery and all that, emancipation and all that, we were fighting in Mexico. We did not come back to America till 1870. So we don't have that part of our identity unless somebody married into somebody who had that background. We don't have that memory as a people. Our memory is of, yes, we know that we're Gullah Geechee, and we know that those are our ancestors. And we know that we were in Florida, and some of our people that we can trace our ancestry have bust names, Indian names, and Seminole names. And our chief was John Horace, which was our leader. So we know that we can trace some of our people's names here in Oklahoma, where we stayed at Fort Gibson for a lot of years, and then we have our history. So we passed down our oral history because we are maroon. So when we left, we took only our own identity. So we have, still to this day, we keep our memory alive by teaching each other. So like we teach our children, we teach our people our history. So ours is unique.
Seminoles or Indians had slaves.
Well, that I think is a misconception from like the Anglo perception, because if you tell somebody that's a slave owner and that their mentality is only in having a slave, and you have somebody that's Seminole that's like married, that's why they didn't lose any of the Indian Wars. Because if you have, let's call it 50 years between the time that Blacks and Indians were in Florida to the first Seminole War. Okay, that's 50 years of some people being bred in. So you could have grandma that's light, grandpa that's dark. My auntie is light, my uncle is dark. You know what I mean? My brother, I've seen people that are brothers and sisters where she's lighter than me and he's dark. That are like, so you have these families that are all different colors. So when they decided, let's go get these people out of Florida because we're losing slaves. People know if they go that far to Florida, they can have freedom. They're going to get a gun, and we need people to work our land.
I got you. Okay,
So,
yeah, I got you. Okay.
so let's go get them. So they pressured the government to go take the land. So some of those people snuck in and they went in there with guns saying, we're going to go get it,
Not
good
just
old boy
land, they're gonna get the
mentality.
people too.
Let's go get them. Let's go get them ourselves. Well, who is going to let you take grandma or your brother or your sister because of the color of their skin? Nobody.
Right.
They will fight to the death.
Right.
That is why the Seminole Wars were never lost. We never lost one and the government never won one because they were coming in to make money and to get a slave. They thought it'd be easy, just go get somebody. And we were fighting for our lives and for our families.
All right, I like it.
So you're not going to let somebody take your mother, your brother, or somebody else. Because, my when I think about that, I think that they said, all right, from this color on, if they're darker, you can have them as a slave. From this color up, let's consider them Seminole and just leave them. Okay? Because they had to have some
family.
Right. So that's what they thought, when they were going to, let's go get them. And, they didn't have to really be their slave. They said, oh, yeah, that's my slave. They could have never seen them before a day in their life and said, that's my slave. Okay. And who's going to argue with them about taking it? Because their whole idea was, we're going to go get somebody to work our land. We need slaves. So when the lighter skinned Seminoles were talking with those people that were coming in to take slaves, they'd be like, well, we want that one. That's a darker one. That's one of our, and in order to communicate with them, you'd have to say, no, you can't have them because they're our slaves.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Even
okay.
if they weren't, because that's going to get rid of them.
Now,
you know what I mean?
Now they said something about that like going up to Oklahoma, the Indians took their slaves with them. That's again what you're addressing right now, right?
Yeah, but who wrote the book?
I see.
The story that you hear is always only from the mentality and the personal judgment of the person who writes it, right?
Now let me ask you this. So now, go back to this part. Where in Florida were they? Is it Miami? Is it northern Florida, southern Florida? What part?
Well, remember, Florida went all the way from Arkansas to the tip of Florida. At the very bottom, like I don't have a map with me, but if you look up an old map from the early 1800s of the Seminoles or Spain, you'll see where that was. And then when you hear like people say like the formation of the Seminole Nation and all these different clans and bands, it's not just one little neighborhood. That is like, look at how big that is.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. That is huge. So when you see like treaties were signed like 4 or 5 people, it wasn't just like one small area. It wasn't just like a county. You know what I'm saying? It's, who do you think that they asked to sign those treaties and stuff like that? Somebody that was going to agree with them, right?
I got you.
Somebody that would work with them. That doesn't mean that was everybody. And it doesn't mean that they spoke for everybody.
I got you.
And the people that wrote the books were the ones that wrote it from their perspective. And then also like the problem with I have found, I've been doing this for 30 years. And the problem that I have found is that people perpetuate the same stories.
I got you.
So instead of getting new material and finding like talking to the people and direct descendants, like I always encourage our young people, look up your own stuff. Yes, read the books. Yes, buy the books. Yes, talk to people that know more than you, but do your own research.
I got you. So now they leave Florida and they go west.
Yes.
Like your family, they were in Florida, right?
Yeah.
And then where did they go west to?
They went, okay, so, and another misconception is Seminoles did not walk the Trail of Tears. We did not walk the Trail of Tears. We came up through a boat and we came up with our arms. We came with our guns.
You came up with a boat?
We came up a boat from Florida along the coast And we came up to Arkansas and we got off the boat there. And then that's why there are some Seminoles right now deep in the bayou in Louisiana.
Okay.
So we came up by boat because they knew we were, first of all, we had money and they were trying to sweet talk us to go there, remember? So they didn't have money to like pay for our travel to come here. So John Horace, which is our band leader, we came with Wildcat and John Horace, he had to loan the government money in order to make that trip because he had money from the different things. Like he spoke like 5 different languages, so he was an interpreter. And I really don't know because that's John Horace is not my specialty either. Like my specialty is our general research only because my grandfather Bullis, that, you know, that's my main thing that I've been looking at all these years, and the Fraustos. And then William W. Warrior, he was my teacher for 30 years. And he recently passed this last year.
So your family, they went to Arkansas, and then from Arkansas, where did they go?
Okay, so we went from Louisiana through Arkansas. We went up the Arkansas River. So we went to Fort Gibson, which is in Oklahoma. Now, they couldn't win the war with us, so they just figured that they would just throw us here in Indian territory, and that they wouldn't have anything to do with us because they did not govern Indian territory. So they wouldn't lose any more money. And it didn't matter if they lost Seminoles, because they were putting us right next to the Creeks. So by that time, the Creeks had been taught how to be slave owners. And it wasn't that easy if you read the early books on that. It wasn't that easy. The Creeks weren't really interested in being slave owners, but they kind of like talked them into it, you know, like make money, you know, here's how you can make some money. Here's the different things that you can do, you know, if you do this. So then they started becoming slave owners. And so then they said, all right, let's put the Seminoles next to the Creeks and then let them deal with it. Let them take them into slavery. Let them absorb the other ones, and you will find some Seminole Creeks that are here. But still to this day, they're not absorbed because they're not saying we're either Seminole or Creek. They identify with Seminole and Creek. So that still didn't even work. But look at how long it took. That took from the 1850s, and it's 2020. So, and I don't know the problems that they had here in Oklahoma, because while some of the Seminoles, they call themselves either Red Seminoles or Black Seminoles here. So the Red Seminoles are the ones that they claim are pure blood, which, like I told you, there's not really any pure blood because it's a created race. Right. And then the ones that say that they are Black Seminoles because they have some Black ancestry. So, and then there's some that are Black that say that they're just Seminole. So, I mean, I don't know their history because that's not my people. Right. But, you know, they had their own different trauma that they had to go. I'm sure it must have been overwhelming, because to think that like slavers were coming after your family, you know, like for our history, John Horace, which was our chief, like I mentioned, he came here, he founded Wewoka. So he founded Wewoka for us to live in. And so while he was here, they stole his sister into slavery. And we still don't know to this very day where it happened to her. Oh. But when that happened, the government knew stuff was going to hit the fan, okay, as soon as they let us loose. Because we had our guns and we were trained fighters, and we already knew how not to lose the war. Because we knew the Seminoles are the ones who started the guerrilla warfare. So we knew how to fight. And what were they going to do with us when you have some Black Indians that are mad with guns and you can't control them? So we sat there at Fort Gibson for a few years because they didn't know what to do with us. So while we were there, that's when we also met some because that's Cherokee land and that's Creek land. You know, it's Cherokee land, but Creeks are right next to it. So when our people went to Mexico, we do have some of our people that are descendants of Black Cherokees and Creeks. So that's where some of our people picked up some of those Creeks and Cherokees. and our tribal people. And so we stayed there for a few years. And then the Kickapoos were merchants, and they used to go back and forth from Kansas to Mexico.
Okay.
So Mexico had abolished slavery in the 1820s, and their president was mixed Black Mexican. So they were having problems settling the state of Coahuila, which is like the, the state above, like right around Texas. I don't know, like the West Bend. And so they were having problems with Comancheros and, Indians. And so then they said, man, we don't know what to do. And the Kickapoos had a reservation down there. And the Kickapoos said, hey, we know somebody. There's these Seminoles that are up there in Fort Gibson, and they're mixed Black, and they know how to fight. And maybe they'll come fight for you. And they said, hey, maybe we have to give them some land because, they want some Indian land. Right. So Mexican government said, hey, we'll give them some land because we've abolished slavery, and we don't care if they're Indian or not, as long as they can do the work. Right. So they gave us a reservation next to the Kickapoos in Mexico. So we left Oklahoma, and it took us a year with our guns and our horses and our supplies. I mean, it wasn't like fancy or anything. Like, I found a book that like talks about what they look like when they went, and it's like a sight to see. And I, don't want to not give it justice. So you really have to read the book. So they go down there, and it takes them a year. Okay, so the people that went, so Wildcat was the hereditary chief, and his father had died, which was King Philip. So we went with Wildcat. Okay, so they didn't want to let Wildcat be the first chief here because he was the hereditary chief, but he was also a fighter and mixed with Black. Okay. And his wife, he had one black wife and one that wasn't. So he wasn't going to let them take anybody into slavery. So that's when they appointed John Jumper. The government appointed John Jumper as the first appointed chief because he could work with them. You understand? Okay. He was willing to do what they needed him to do. So the people that were here, the Seminole people, and I'm not just talking about the Black Seminoles, I'm talking about, because before this, we were all Seminole. We weren't Black Seminole. We were Seminole. Okay. We all had the identity of Seminole. Okay. But at that point, when we were going to Mexico, half of the Seminole Nation went and half of it stayed here. So just like you would do now, some people are like, hey, we're modern. We're here in this new place. We don't care about what happened. We're doing a new thing here. Okay. And then there's people that are like traditional, like, no, this is our chief. We follow our chief wherever he goes. If he goes to Mexico, we're going to go.
Let me stop you there. If you got any idea how many, what's the population of Seminole at Fort Gibson?
No, I don't, because I haven't done that research.
Okay.
But I would say, I know the numbers are out there, how many went to Mexico.
Okay.
So it's in the hundreds.
Oh, okay. So it's 100.
Yeah, it's like it's over 300 because it was 300 of us that came back, and that was like a quarter of, the people. So I don't know. I really don't know.
You alluded to writing a book about your grandfather. Mm-hmm. And he is who, and what would be some of what's his, for lack of a better word, the claim of fame or something like that about him?
Well, because he's the white guy, right? He's the white guy that became the famous guy, because people always say bad things about him. Like I don't know how to say this properly, but some writers that I have met get very mad. They say that they love my grandfather because he's done some wonderful things, right? Like for American history, he's like, wow. Okay. But when they hear that he liked women that were mixed, like his wives were Mexican, Spanish. He didn't like white women. And so then here he was with my grandma that was like mixed with Black, but he was Quaker. He wasn't a racist. And so they don't want to hear that. They want to whitewash it. They
I
want
see
to
what
make my grandfather something that he wasn't. And I think that's more beautiful what my grandfather was.
yeah, no question. Now, is he your
So,
grandfather or great grandfather?
well, I call him my grandfather, but he's my great great grandfather.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, it's got to be a little further down the line than
Yeah,
grandfather.
and then the woman that he had the child with, she lived there. Like the son was born at the Seminole camp there at Fort Clark. So like her father was a Seminole scout, and her three brothers were Seminole scouts. So I also have that proud history of the Seminole Scouts.
Now, what's a Seminole Scout?
So a Seminole Scout is somebody that where our history is from Florida, from there to Mexico. So then, like I said, we were in Mexico and we fought for 20 years for the Mexican government. Okay. And so we do have a land there in Mexico, which some of our people live there, but some of them moved, and we settled West Texas. Now, if you look up our history, it's a beautiful history. We have Seminole Days every year. We talk about it every year. We're still proud of our ancestors,
Right.
and we still produce a lot of warriors. So that's who the Seminole Indian Scouts are, Seminole Negro Indian Scouts are. And so
Okay.
I'm a descendant of that.
Okay.
And so are my people, our people. That's who we are.
Okay.
And so because we're undefeated warriors, I mean, we have been fighting since the beginning of the Seminole Nation. So we have in our cemetery, we have the most military personnel that's buried in all of America in a private cemetery.
Oh.
And we have 4 Congressional Medal of Honor winners from the Indian Wars that are buried there. So that's who I talk about when, that's where my focus is. Like, you can't, it's kind of hard to do anything else besides do that, because,
To it too.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're gonna stop there. We're gonna look forward to the book.
All right.
And in the time that I tried a lot, I mean, there could be a lot that I understand you could talk about, and we'll talk offline. Maybe we can come back again and share some more thoughts. But you really did clear up some things for me anyway, and I'm sure for our viewers here on the channel. And so I thank you so very much for coming on. And everybody, I told you I find some interesting people. I didn't know this. Man, all I can think is cowboys and Indians. I'll be perfectly honest with you. And we can talk about that on another note. But that's not really all the case. It's very complex. And so everybody, come on, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video. I know she enlightened you. She enlightened me. Hit the notifications bell. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. We're covering everything here. And to my guests, I say I thank you so very much for coming on the show, sharing your family history. It's a rich history. It's beautiful history. You all are warriors, as you said, and fighters, and you don't lose. And you integrate with us Africans, and that's a beautiful thing. And then also I say to you, I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. We're looking forward to the book. Go ahead and finish it. Take the time out, write a little bit every day, but do finish that book, please. And then we're going to promote that book for you. And so everybody, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you for being on the show. We out.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.